Hello, Andrew here yet again, and this is episode 92. Today we're continuing in our series on the Sermon on the Mount, and we're picking the Gospel up at Matthew chapter 5 verses 38 to 42. Now this is a passage which you will know well, I have no doubt, and it's perhaps one of the ones that is perhaps best known and I suspect most written about, with all sorts of interesting understandings and explanations as to what it's about. So we pick it up, and as I said, you'll recognise it. Verse 38 of chapter 5. You have heard that it was said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. But I say to you, do not resist an evildoer. But if anyone strikes you on the right cheek, turn the other also. And if anyone wants to sue you and take your coat, give your cloak as well. And if someone forces you to go 1 mile, go also the 2nd mile. Give to everyone who begs from you, and do not refuse anyone who wants to borrow from you. It strikes me on this reading that the key words, perhaps found in verse 39, do not resist an evildoer, or literally, I tell you not to oppose the evil. This would seem to run contrary to the words of James in chapter 4 verse 7, resist the devil and he will flee from you. Yet the context needs to be unpicked and perhaps understood. In each of the 3 examples that Jesus gives, power rests with the initiator, the one who's coming to claim something from us. An eye for an eye indicates an indebtedness. Someone is obligated to make some form of restoration. So this is inviting me to make restoration to somebody, to grant them some satisfaction. For example, if someone's sheep that I was looking after goes missing, well, it's my job to restore them like for like. Someone damages me, I lose an eye on their land through an accident of something that they had responsibility for. Well, in a sense, they're due an eye. So here's the sense that I am obligated to this person. And it's my job to make restoration. So Jesus is saying, when it's your job to make restoration, an eye for an eye or a tooth for a tooth, these are the things you need to think about. There is a debt to be paid. This is about when I owe someone else. It's our legal and moral obligation. This is not about someone being nasty to you or to me, though they might be. This is about you and me fulfilling our obligations, and this needs to be understood. It's easy to make the other person the villain. They aren't. Well, not necessarily. If there is one, the villain is you or it's me. They are simply asking for that which they're legally entitled to. Here we go again. Right, well, here we go again. As I said, it needs to be understood that this is about fulfilling an obligation to the other. They're simply asking what they are legally entitled to. And it's not about us claiming our rights. It's about how one responds to someone who is claiming theirs, claiming what is legally due to them. It may be malicious, it may be nasty, it may be vindictive. It may be driven by that which is less than loving or generous, yet it is their legal due. So how are we to respond? Well, Jesus' suggestion, in a sense, is about reclaiming our power. And he's saying, don't just let them take it, whatever it is. Give it to them, plus interest. Give it to them willingly. Give it to them with a sense of generosity, with a sense of a desire that they be blessed in some way. And he says this actually takes the sting out of the claim. It takes the sting out of the loss. and it actually can take from us our feelings of bitterness or resentment. Their victory, if they're framing it that way, ultimately becomes Pyrrhic, because they see that actually it's not causing you a huge amount of angst. If driven by evil intent, they want to see you, they want to see me suffer. When we're clearly not doing this, this removes most of the joy and the satisfaction from the moment. It can also, as Rob Bell points out, put them in a disadvantaged position, the strategies that Jesus is suggesting. And one of his Robcasts, that's what he calls them, not a podcast, it's a Robcast. This is very useful. I just encourage you to check Rob out at, I think it's robbell.com. And he's got some really, really good stuff. I've learnt a huge amount from Rob. And so what he's saying is that there's a way in which that if we take Jesus seriously, we're actually claiming our power back and putting the other person on the defensive. The one who strikes you on the cheek, for example, is only allowed to use the back of their hand. This is according to Rob. To turn the other cheek and insist that they get satisfaction that is total is to put them at a disadvantage by inviting them to strike you with an open hand, or with a fist, which actually is illegal. They're not allowed to do that. To offer your cloak is another good example. Would effectively mean that you now stand before them naked. I think the word is the undergarment. And because people only often had two. They had the undergarment, they had the thing they wore over it, the coat, and the undergarment. And when you stand before them naked, this actually then becomes their problem. We might think it's our problem. No, it's not. Because Rob points out that the offence in Jewish society rests not with the one who is naked, but with the one who looks. We can see why. People could literally claim the shirt off your back. We talk about it as a metaphor, but in fact it could happen. And if your life has gone really pear-shaped, for whatever reason, you could literally end up naked without a stitch. So nakedness, in terms of inciting lust and all those sorts of things, is not the problem of the one who is naked. The Jewish people didn't see them as the one with the problem, because it could be about their falling on hard times. They're not necessarily in the end responsible. The responsibility rests with the one who either makes them naked or the one who looks. There's a story that I heard some years ago of a group of bleeding rabbis, that whenever they saw an attractive woman they would look the other way, just to make sure that they weren't tempted in any way, that they weren't defiled. Well, they kept banging into posts and rubbish tins and whatever, and as I say, they became known as the bleeding rabbis. It's the person who looks who has the issue. So to give them your undergarment also is, in effect, in Rob's world, to put them at a disadvantage. And they're the ones who have caused your nakedness and created the problem for themselves and for others. Now, the third one of voluntarily insisting on carrying a Roman soldier's kit, a second mile, puts the soldier in place of engaging in an illegal action. The law only allowed them to use a civilian to carry their gear 1 mile, no more. Irrespective of the direction the civilian was going in, they didn't have to be going in the same way. They could have been coming towards you, and you could insist as a Roman soldier that they carry your gear for 1 mile, but only 1. Imagine you get to the end of the mile and say, well, I'm going to keep going and carry it for another mile for you. The Roman soldier's not allowed to let you do that. Not allowed to let you do that. If a commanding or a superior officer saw that, the Roman soldier then is in trouble. They're the ones who were in the gun for allowing you to engage in an illegal activity. And they themselves, every step they would take into the second mile exposes them to disciplinary action. And so these are another way of looking at these three incidents that Jesus gives in this account. And yet in the end, it seems to me that I'm not sure about any of them. In the end, it is the heart out of which we respond that Jesus is addressing. Jesus is seeking to create kingdom of heaven kind of people. People who are comfortable in their own skin. People who are gracious, kind, generous, and not given to vindictiveness or driven by a desire for revenge. People who are serene and are able to respond to any situation without a need to lash out at others. It also seems that Jesus is pointing to the reality that pushing back in this kind of situation is unlikely to be an opportunity for reform for the evil person. Nobody is forced into goodness or love against their will. They can, however, be reached by someone who responds genuinely in generosity, in kindness, and in love. One of the most powerful stories I've seen over the last few years is the story of Megan Phelps-Roper. She was the communications officer, the social media guru for the Westboro Baptist Church. Now, if you don't know about this group, they are a very fundamentalist group in the United States that would turn up to servicemen's funerals. And when dead servicemen have been repatriated to the United States, carrying placards and signs and chanting, and their byline was "God hates fags." And they were basically a very hateful group of people, but they were strictly, in their mind, interpreting and expounding what they saw the Bible to be saying. Now, Megan was the person who advanced their cause on social media, and she loved to do it. She loved a good fight. But there was one person who engaged with her in a way that she couldn't handle. This person was so kind. This person prodded away, picked away at the edge of the things that she was saying and drew her into a new way of seeing. She actually blocked this person for a while, and she found it really, really difficult to handle this person. She didn't know whether this person was a man or a woman. She didn't know whether they were young or old. She didn't know anything about them. But she sensed the genuine interest and concern and love from this person. And she came to love this anonymous person. In the end, this person led her completely out of the Westboro Baptist Church. And they're now married with one child. It's a beautiful story. But she was loved out. She wasn't argued out. She wasn't beaten out. She wasn't dragged out. She wasn't persuaded out. She was loved out. And she continues to love her family, although she's no longer part of the whole scene. She's moved into a very, very different place. An eye for an eye rarely changes anyone for good. Only love does that. In the end, it seems to me that the invitation here of Jesus is about drawing venom from others. It's about doing what we have to seek life-giving relationships. And that's why at this point I'm not sure that the Rob Bell strategy is the right one, as much as I respect Rob. Because it seems to me that he's using it as a subtle way of levelling the playing field. What it seems to me, though, is that Jesus' invitation is to ensure that we do whatever we have to make sure that our protagonist has satisfaction. That they can never turn around and say that, oh, well, I didn't get my full measure of vengeance or of satisfaction. It's a good word. Our end goal, and this is Jesus' end goal, I believe, is to turn our enemy into our friend. That's why I think he's saying what he does. Well, God bless you.